In the deep black of space, where suns burned cold and stars seemed like distant eyes, the Zarkin Dominion ruled. They were known as the predators of the galaxy. Hunters who believed mercy was a disease and fear was the finest spice of life. For thousands of years, they had conquered, consumed, and erased. Every new species became another story of their dominance. But even predators have leaders, and among the Zarkins, General Kortal stood above all. Kortal was huge, even for his kind. His scales were the color of iron, his eyes bright like molten silver. He wore armor made from the bones of creatures he had slain. His name was whispered in terror on more than 50 worlds. And tonight, as he sat in his warship, the Devourer's claw, he smiled. They had just finished wiping out another small species. Weak, soft-bodied creatures who cried and begged before being burned to ash. The crew laughed, feasted, and drank thick red blood from silver cups. The hall was full of noise, growls, roars, and cruel laughter. Another meal well earned, Kortal said, raising his goblet. And soon our next hunt begins. A younger soldier leaned forward, eager. Who is our next prey, General? Kortal grinned, showing rows of sharp teeth. A primitive race from the edge of the Orion Arm. They call themselves humans. The table erupted in laughter. Humans, one sneered. I've seen their images. Small, hairless, emotional. They cry at the sight of death. Another added, their eyes leak water when they're sad. How pathetic. Kortal slammed his clawed hand on the table. And that, my brothers, is why we hunt them. Let the galaxy watch as we crush these crying animals. The feast turned into chaos. The Zarkins shouted in excitement. To them, it was not war, it was entertainment. They planned to land on Earth, show their power, and make humans an example. Every race that watched would learn. Emotion means weakness. But far away, on a small blue planet spinning quietly in space, humans were watching too. High above the clouds, in a secret orbital station, a human named Dr. Ilara Voss stared at her screen. She was tall, thin, and calm, her eyes cold, her voice soft. She had seen the same transmissions from the Zarkins. The roars, the laughter, the arrogance. The predators are coming, she whispered. Right on time. Behind her, soldiers and scientists worked in silence. Lights blinked, alarms pulsed, and one massive containment door began to open. Inside, that chamber was not a weapon, not a machine, not a soldier. It was a child, a small human toddler, maybe 2 years old, sitting in the middle of a bright white room. He had big brown eyes and messy hair. He was playing with a soft toy and humming a song. The soldiers looked nervous. Are you sure this will work, Doctor? One asked. Ilara nodded slowly. It will. It has to. She touched the glass. His name is Eli, and when the time comes, the galaxy will remember him. Back aboard the Zarkin ship, the hunters prepared for the jump to Earth. Kortal stood before the stars, his voice booming. This new world will feed our glory. When we arrive, there will be no mercy. We will take their young first, break their spirit, crush their hope. The soldiers howled in agreement. The Devourer's claw lit up with energy. The stars stretched, twisted, and vanished as they entered warp space. Kortal closed his eyes, imagining the hunt. He had killed many species before, but this time felt different. There was something strange, something he couldn't explain. A quiet whisper in his mind, like a voice from a void. He opened his eyes and shook it off. Fear is for prey, he muttered, not for hunters. Hours later, the fleet exited warp above Earth's orbit. The blue planet glowed below them, peaceful, unaware. Scan the surface, Kortal ordered. A soldier pressed a claw against the console. Scanning now. Wait, what is this? There's interference. From what? I... I don't know, sir. It's coming from the surface. A single source. Small. Organic. Organic. Cortal frowned. Show me. A holographic image appeared. Tiny, alone, sitting in the ruins of a human city. A small child. The toddler looked up at the sky, eyes wide, tears rolling down his cheeks. He was crying. The bridge went silent. Cortal tilted his head. That is what stands against us. A child. The soldiers laughed again, but their laughter sounded forced this time. Cortal grinned, though something about that image, those tears, felt wrong. He couldn't explain it, but deep inside, a faint unease stirred in his chest. He leaned closer to the hologram, whispering to himself, "Show me what you are, little one." Then he gave the order, "Send a strike team. Bring me the child alive." As the Zarkan dropships burned through the clouds toward the surface, lightning flashed over the ocean. The air itself seemed to tremble. And far below, in the ruins of the playground, Eli's cry grew louder. In the distance, Dr. Alara Voss watched from orbit. Her hand hovered over a control panel. A single green button blinked. She whispered, "They wanted to see our weakness." Her eyes hardened. "Let them see what fear really sounds like." She pressed the button. The signal pulsed through the Earth's atmosphere, and the cry of one human child echoed into space. The Zarkan strike ship cut through the clouds like a silver claw. Lightning flashed across its hull as it descended into Earth's ruined cityscape. Beneath them, the once living world lay in quiet ruins. Towers fallen, streets cracked, and silence as heavy as the grave. Inside the ship, 10 Zarkan soldiers checked their weapons. Their armor shimmered under the dull red lights. Their leader, Captain Vorik, stood at the front, his fangs clicking together. "Remember," he growled, "the general wants a human child alive. Do not damage it." The others hissed in agreement. None of them understood why their mighty general cared about one small human, but orders were orders. As the dropship landed, the metal ramp opened with a loud hiss. Hot air and dust rushed in. The city was quiet. Too quiet. Vorik's claw tapped against his weapon. "Spread out. Find the sound source." The Zarkans moved like shadows through the ruins. Their heavy steps echoed softly on broken stone. Strange shapes of toys lay scattered in the dirt. A small ball, a teddy bear, a crack slide. And then, from the center of the playground, they heard it. A cry. It was soft, almost human, but it carried far. It echoed through the streets, into the walls, into their helmets, into their heads. Vorik raised his hand. "There. That's it." They moved closer, weapons ready. The sound came from a small human boy sitting in the middle of a puddle. He was crying, eyes red, face dirty, tears rolling down his cheeks. He looked up at them, 10 tall armor monsters, and whimpered. The Zarkans laughed. "This is what the humans sent against us," one said. "A hatchling. He cannot even walk straight," another mocked. Vorik smiled cruelly. "Weak, just like their kind." He stepped closer. "Pick it up. Let's end this joke." A soldier moved forward and reached for the boy. That's when the air changed. The light dimmed. The sound of the wind stopped. And then came the echo. The child's cry deepened. Not louder, not higher, but heavier. It was as if the air itself was vibrating, as if the world was breathing with the child's sobs. The soldier froze. "Captain, my suit." Static filled their helmets. The comms went dead. Their scanners blinked and shut off. One by one, their visors darkened, flickering like dying stars. Vorik snarled, "What is happening?" Then they heard it, a heartbeat. Not theirs, not the child's. It was everywhere. Boom, boom, boom. A deep, slow rhythm pulsing through the earth. The crying stopped. For a single second, everything was silent. Then the ground split open. A shock wave threw the Zarkans off their feet. Their armor screamed with alarms. The buildings nearby cracked, glass shattering into dust. Vorik tried to stand, but gravity itself seemed wrong. The air shimmered, bending like water. He looked at the boy again, still sitting, still small, but now faint blue light glowed under his skin. His eyes turned bright white, and when he opened his mouth again, the cry returned, but now it wasn't just sound. It was power. The world around him rippled like a storm of invisible waves. The Zarkins screamed as their armor warped and twisted. Metal melted. Their weapons bent in half. Vorik clawed at his helmet, trying to breathe. It's not possible. The child's voice echoed through the ruins. Why did you hurt my home? The sound didn't come from his mouth. It came from everywhere. High above, in orbit, Dr. Alarivos watched the feed from the satellite cameras. The energy reading spiked higher than ever before. Her assistant whispered, "It's happening again, Doctor. Phase 2. Alara didn't blink. Maintain link control. Do not interfere." She leaned closer to the screen. The blue glow from the child spread outward in waves, forming a pattern across the entire city. A network of invisible signals. The soldiers behind her watched in awe. One of them asked, "What exactly is he, ma'am?" Ilara's voice was calm. "He's human." Back on the surface, the Zarkin soldiers broke formation. Fear, something their species had forgotten centuries ago, returned. "Captain, retreat," one shouted, but Vorik couldn't move. His legs shook. His claws trembled. He stared at the human child and saw not weakness, but something far older, something that didn't belong to any science or weapon. It was raw emotion, pure and powerful. He gasped as the cry grew louder again, tearing through the air like thunder. Every Zarkin screamed as their helmets shattered. The vibration crawled into their bones. Their minds filled with images, their own nightmares, memories, fears they didn't even know they had. They saw their home worlds burning. They saw themselves hunted. They saw the faces of every creature they had ever killed. Staring back at them, the child cried once more, and the last thing Vorik saw was the sky folding in on itself. Then silence. Hours later, when the human recovery drones arrived, the city was still. The alien ship was gone, torn apart into dust. At the center of the destruction sat little Eli, sleeping peacefully in the middle of the playground. The soft toy was still in his hands. The air around him hummed with faint blue light, slowly fading. Dr. Alara's voice came through the drone speakers. "He's stable. Retrieve him gently. Project Echo is working." The drone's camera focused on the child's face. For a moment, it almost looked like he was smiling in his sleep. In the void above, the Zarkin fleet listened to the last message from their ground team. Broken, terrified voices repeating one word again and again before the signal ended. "Run, run, run." General Kortow watched the static on his screen, his claws gripping the armrest. For the first time in his life, the great predator felt something new. The earth was silent again. Where the alien strike team had landed, there was now only dust, melted steel, and the faint whisper of the wind. In orbit, the observation deck of Station Vigil, 9 glowed with soft blue light. Screens flickered with data, radiation levels, sound frequencies, emotional wave patterns. At the center of it all stood Dr. Alarivos, her hands clasped behind her back. She watched the live feed of the playground. The small child, Eli, slept quietly inside a containment cradle. Around him, drones moved gently, collecting air samples and measuring the residual energy that shimmered like faint fog. A young officer approached. His voice shook. "Doctor, the Zarkin landing squad, they're gone. Completely. Not even molecular traces left." Ilara nodded, her face calm. "Expected." "Expected?" the officer whispered. They were one of the strongest species in the galaxy. How could one child? Ilara turned to face him. Her eyes were tired but sharp. "You still think this is about strength?" The officer didn't answer. She looked back at the screen. What destroyed them wasn't muscle or technology. It was emotion, something they've never understood and never respected. Across the galaxy, news spread faster than light. The Zarkin's fleet had stopped transmitting. Their scouts had vanished. And the human world, once considered weak, was silent. On the galactic net, rumors burned like fire. A child weapon? A psychic defense field? A curse? The other races, the Crothi, the Solvan, the Red Veil traders, began locking their borders. Some offered to negotiate with humanity. Others planned to flee to the outer systems. But on Earth, there was no celebration. Only quiet. Deep beneath the surface of Antarctica, in a hidden bunker known as Vault Echo, the Human Defense Council gathered. 12 figures sat around a long black table. Soldiers, scientists, strategists, and one chair left empty, reserved for fallen of the last war. The lights dimmed as Alara entered the room. She placed a small device on the table. A hologram appeared, showing Eli's image, peaceful, sleeping, surrounded by a faint blue glow. Counselor Reed, a broad man with a scar across his face, spoke first. "Report, Doctor." Alara Voss, Project Echo Director, she began. Phase 2 completed successfully. Subject E, one neutralized Zarkin strike team without direct human intervention. Murmurs filled the room. One of the generals leaned forward. "And collateral damage?" "Minimal." Alara replied, "No human casualties. Environmental effects limited to a 12-kilometer radius. The energy field stabilized within 2 hours." Counselor Reed nodded slowly. "And the boy?" Alara hesitated. "He's fine, physically, but we detected something new, emotional amplification feedback. His power responds directly to empathy levels around him. Fear increases output. Calmness stabilizes it. Meaning if someone hurts him or scares him." She paused. "The results multiply." The room went quiet. Counselor Reed rubbed his chin. "You created a living weapon, Doctor. A human emotion turned into energy." Alara's gaze hardened. "No, we didn't create him. We found him. His parents died in the first invasion. His power, it's natural. Project Echo only built a way to guide it." The general frowned. "Then we're dealing with something beyond science." Alara nodded. "We always were." Meanwhile, far across the stars, General Cortal stared at the burned wreckage of his returning ships. What remained of his strike fleet floated silently in space. Torn metal, drifting bodies, and fragments of armor that once gleamed with pride. The bridge was dark, except for the soft pulse of failing lights. Cortal's claws dug into his throne. "Explain," he growled. A trembling technician stammered. We don't know, General. The energy signature, it wasn't plasma or radiation. It was emotional resonance." "Speak clearly." The technician swallowed. "The human weapon uses feeling, sir. Fear, pain, grief, they amplify it. The stronger the emotion, the deadlier the response." The general's tail lashed against the floor. "Impossible. Emotions are weakness." He roared, slamming his fist through the console. Sparks burst around him. But deep inside, something else moved. Something Cortal had never known. A strange, tight feeling in his chest. "Fear." He whispered the word to himself as if testing it. "Fear." Then, slowly he stood. "Prepare the fleet. We are not finished. If humanity wishes to fight with feelings, we will burn their hearts to ash." But even as he spoke, his voice trembled. Back on Earth, Eli opened his eyes. Soft lights glowed above him. He sat up, blinking sleepily, surrounded by quiet machines and humming drones. Alara entered the room, her steps soft. She smiled gently. "Good morning, Lai." The boy rubbed his eyes. "Did I do bad again?" "No," she said softly, kneeling beside him. "You saved us." He looked down, but they were screaming. Alara hesitated. She placed her hand on his shoulder. "Sometimes The ones who hurt others have to hear what they've done. Eli nodded, not really understanding. Ilera stood, looking through the glass wall at the stars beyond. He's learning control, she whispered. But the galaxy is learning something else. The soldier beside her frowned. What's that? She smiled faintly. That humanity is no longer prey. Later that night, the broadcast towers lit up. A message was sent across all known space, not in threat, not in pride, but in simple truth. It read, "We are humanity. We have lost much. We will not strike first. But if you come to harm us again, remember the cry." Far away, in the black silence between stars, thousands of alien ships listened to that message. Some laughed, some trembled, but none of them slept easily, because somewhere on Earth, a little boy was dreaming, and even in his dreams, the air hummed with quiet, unstoppable power. The Zarkin flagship Devourer's claw drifted through space like a wounded beast. Its dark hull once shone like polished obsidian, but now it flickered with failing lights and glowing scars. Inside, the great halls that once echoed with laughter and pride were silent. General Cortal stood at the bridge window, staring into the endless black. He had not slept in 3 rotations. His claws dug into the railing until sparks flew. In the reflection of the glass, he saw himself, a warrior who once believed fear was weakness. Now his reflection trembled. Behind him, officers whispered among themselves. Their voices were quiet, fearful, an emotion once punishable by death. "Have you ever seen him stand so still?" one asked. Another replied, "He listens. He says the silence speaks to him now." They did not know he could hear every word. He just stared out at the stars, his mind echoing with that sound. The crying of a human child that had destroyed a strike team. Even now, it haunted the ship's memory banks. The sound played randomly through the comms, though every recording device had been destroyed. It wasn't technology. It was something else. Cortal finally spoke, his voice low. "How many ships remain?" 312, General. Out of 800. Cortal's claws tightened. "And the ground team?" "Gone, sir. Not a single signal left." The silence stretched. Then, softly, he said, "They laughed at us once. Now they whisper our name like a curse." On the lower decks, the soldiers were restless. Predators who had once walked proudly now huddled in groups, their eyes darting toward the dark corners of the ship. Some claimed they saw a child's shadow running down the halls. Others heard crying inside the walls. One officer shot himself after hearing the sound through his helmet, a soft voice asking, "Why did you hurt my home?" Panic spread faster than any infection. The Zarkins, who had conquered 100 species, were now prisoners of their own fear. In the war room, a dozen commanders gathered around a holographic map of Earth. Blue energy readings pulsed across the planet's surface, shifting like living veins. "It's spreading," said one scientist. "The emotional field is expanding beyond their world. Soon it will reach the moon." Another slammed his fist on the table. "It's impossible. How can emotion travel through space?" "It's not emotion," the scientist whispered. "It's resonance. Thought energy. The human mind is amplifying itself." The room fell silent as the lights flickered again. For a moment, the air temperature dropped below freezing. Then came the sound. Soft, faint, a child sob. Everyone froze. "Turn it off," one commander shouted. "It's not coming from the speakers," the technician whispered. His eyes were wide with terror. "It's coming from us." High above the ship, the human observation satellites quietly watched. Dr. Lara Voss stood before her team in Station Vigil 9, analyzing the data. "The emotional frequency is increasing," said her assistant. "They're unraveling faster than predicted." Ilera nodded. "Good. They're finally feeling what they've made us feel." The soldier beside her looked uneasy. "Doctor, we're not actually hurting them, right?" Ilera glanced at him, her face unreadable. "Pain? No, not in the way they understand it. They're hearing echoes, reflections of their own cruelty." She paused, watching the data climb. "They called us emotional. Let's show them what emotion really means. Back on the Devourer's claw, alarms blared. Something was entering their system. Invisible, silent, and fast. Unidentified signal approaching, a technician shouted. It's not a ship, it's a pattern. Cortal leaned forward. What kind of pattern? It's sound, sir. A repeating frequency like a heartbeat. Boom, boom, boom. It shook the hull. Every Zarkan froze. The rhythm echoed through their chests, syncing with their own hearts until they couldn't tell which beat was theirs. Shut it down, the general roared. But the ship didn't respond. The engines dimmed. Lights flickered. Systems failed one by one. Cortal turned slowly toward the main screen. There, floating in the void between stars, appeared a faint blue glow. It shaped itself into a figure, small, human, and familiar. A child. Eli. The image wasn't real. It was made of light, of thought, of something beyond their understanding. But every Zarkan saw it, and every one of them felt the same thing. Guilt. The child looked up at them with wide eyes. Why do you keep hurting people? He asked softly. Cortal's throat tightened. You are not real, he growled. But his voice shook. The child tilted his head. Then why are you afraid? In that moment, every Zarkan ship received the same transmission. A soft human voice carried through the void. This is Earth. We are not your prey. Leave now and live. The signal ended. Some ships turned away immediately, fleeing into deep space. Others froze, unwilling to admit defeat. Cortal's ship remained still. He stared at the stars, then whispered to his officers, If we run today, the galaxy will never respect us again. Sir, we've already lost. One officer said quietly, Maybe it's time we learn. Cortal's eyes burned with pride and rage. Predators do not learn from prey. Then came the hum again, that same heartbeat. Louder, stronger. The ship shook violently. Walls cracked. Consoles burst into flame. Cortal's last sight was that small, glowing figure reaching out a tiny hand. Not to destroy him, but to comfort him. And that, somehow, was worse than death. The Devourer's claw vanished in a blinding flash of blue light. Back on Earth, Dr. Alara Voss closed her eyes as the monitors went dark. A voice behind her whispered, It's over? She nodded. For them, the rest will remember. She turned toward the viewport, where the stars shone quietly. Let them fear us, if that's what it takes. But one day, maybe they'll understand. In the nursery beside her, Eli slept peacefully, a faint smile on his face. Outside, the galaxy trembled, and for the first time in history, the predators felt preyed upon. The galaxy was quiet, too quiet. After the fall of the Zarkan flagship, the great predator fleets vanished from known space. Across hundreds of worlds, silence replaced war. Hunters became ghosts, and their prey learned to breathe again. But peace never comes without questions. And deep beneath the frozen surface of Antarctica, in the secret complex known as Vault Echo, humanity prepared to answer them. Dr. Alara Voss stood before the Council of Nations, her hands folded neatly behind her back. The council chamber was dark, except for a single light above the center table. Around her sat the most powerful minds and leaders humanity had, admirals, presidents, scientists, philosophers, all waiting for the same thing, the truth. A gray-haired man at the head of the table spoke first. His voice was heavy. Dr. Voss, we've seen the reports. The Zarkan Dominion is gone. Their entire fleet erased by a resonance field, generated by a human child. He paused. We need to know how this is possible. Alara nodded slowly. Then I'll tell you everything. She touched the control pad before her. The lights dimmed further and a hologram flickered to life, showing images of destroyed cities, fallen towers, and burning skies. This, she said softly, is how it began. 20 years earlier, the first galactic invasion. The Zarkans had come without warning, striking Earth like a storm of fire. Billions died in the first week. Human armies fought bravely, but our weapons meant nothing against theirs. When the war finally ended, humanity was half ash and half memory. Alara's voice trembled slightly as she continued. That's when we made a promise. If we ever face extinction again, we wouldn't fight with fear or hatred. We would fight with what makes us human. The hologram changed, showing laboratory scientists and volunteers. Project Echo was born. Not a weapon, a mirror. It converts human emotion into energy. Emotion so strong it resonates with the universe itself. A younger Alara appeared in the footage, standing beside a small containment pod. Inside was a baby wrapped in a blue blanket. His name glowed on the screen, Eli Voss. A murmur went through the room. "Yes," she said quietly. "He's my son." She took a breath before continuing. Eli was born during the invasion. His father died in orbit defending the last colony ship. I remember holding him while the world burned outside. She smiled faintly, sadness in her eyes. He didn't cry much, not until the war ended. Then he cried for days, as if he could feel the pain of every lost life. We ran tests. His brain emitted waves no scanner could explain. Emotional frequency patterns, capable of altering physical matter. The council members leaned forward, spellbound. "We realized he was connected," she said, "to everything. His emotions didn't stay inside him. They spread outward, shaping energy fields, even affecting machines." "Doctor," one general interrupted, "are you saying this child is Project Echo?" "No," Alara replied calmly. "I'm saying he became it." She walked closer to the hologram. "We built the Echo systems not to control him, but to protect him, to focus his emotions. When he feels fear, it defends. When he feels love, it heals. When he feels grief," she stopped, "it destroys." The council sat in silence. Finally, Counselor Reed spoke. "Then how do we control something like that? A weapon powered by emotion, by a child heart." Alara turned to face him. "You don't control it. You understand it. You nurture it." A faint smile crossed her lips. "That's the secret the predators never learned. They thought emotion was weakness, but it's our greatest strength. Fear teaches us caution. Anger drives us to act. Love keeps us alive." She looked at them one by one. "Eli isn't a monster. He's humanity's mirror. The galaxy saw his tears, but those tears came from us, from what we've suffered, and what we refuse to become again." In orbit, high above the Earth, the Zarkan ruins floated in silence. Human drones moved through the debris, collecting fragments of alien metal still pulsing with strange blue light, the lingering resonance of Eli's cry. Inside one of the drones, a faint signal still played, a sound that none of the machines could explain. It was a heartbeat, slow, steady, human. Back in Vault Echo, Alara walked down a narrow hallway, her footsteps echoing softly. At the end was a transparent observation window. Behind it, Eli sat on the floor, drawing with colored pencils. He looked up and smiled when he saw her. "Hi, Mama." Alara smiled back. "Hi, sweetheart." He held up his drawing, a picture of a blue planet surrounded by stars and strange shapes. "This is us," he said proudly. "And these are the others. They were mean before, but they can be nice now." Alara's heart tightened. "You think so?" He nodded. "They just forgot how to feel. I can help them remember." Tears filled her eyes, but she smiled through them. "Yes, Eli, maybe you can." Later that night, she recorded her report. "This is Dr. Alara Voss, Project Echo. The Zarkans are neutralized. Emotional resonance weaponization confirmed. Subject E1 stable and aware." She paused and added softly, "But he's still just a child, and if the universe ever forces him to cry again, I don't know what will be left standing." She turned off the recorder and looked out the window at the stars. Somewhere out there, thousands of species were listening to stories of the crying human child who destroyed a fleet. They whispered his name with fear, but one day, she hoped, they'd whisper it with understanding, because the truth was simple and terrifying. Humanity didn't create a weapon. Humanity became one. Stars drifted quietly above Earth, unaware of the storm about to begin. For weeks after the fall of the Zarkans, the galaxy had remained still, too afraid to move, too cautious to speak. But fear has a way of turning into curiosity, and curiosity, among the stars, was dangerous. In the cold reaches of space, near the border of human territory, a coalition fleet assembled. Dozens of species, the Crothi, the Thal, the Varen Collective, each one sworn enemy of the other, but now united by one shared terror. Humanity. At the center of the command ship, the Crothi commander raised his claw and pointed to the holographic projection of Earth. "This planet has become a wound in the galaxy," he hissed. "Their child broke the laws of existence. If we do not stop them now, soon emotion itself will destroy us all." The Council of Species murmured in agreement. The decision was made. They would strike again. But this time, not with fleets of metal and fire. They would use silence. A containment field to cut Earth off from the galaxy. A prison made of no energy, where no signal, no sound, and no feeling could escape. The Crothi commander smiled. Let the humans learn what true isolation feels like. Far below on the surface, Dr. Alara Voss stood in the control room of Vault Echo. Her reflection shimmered in the glass as she watched her son play behind a containment window. Eli was humming softly, stacking colored blocks into towers. He looked calm, peaceful, but the air trembled faintly around him, the kind of tremor her instruments had learned to fear. A technician rushed in. "Doctor, incoming energy spike from orbit. Multiple sources. They're surrounding the planet." Alara's heart froze. "Show me." The screen lit up with dozens of alien ships forming a ring around Earth. Bright lines of energy connected them, a web of power slowly tightening. "It's a null field," the technician whispered. "They're trying to trap us." Alara's mind raced. "No. If that field completes, it'll cut off all resonance flow. Eli's connection to the network will collapse." The soldier beside her frowned. "Collapse? What happens then?" Alara swallowed hard. "He'll panic." Inside his room, Eli felt it before anyone else did. A strange stillness filled the air, like the world was holding its breath. He looked up, confused. His toys stopped floating midair. The soft hum he always felt around him, the heartbeat of Earth, went silent. "Mama," he called softly. No answer. He stood and pressed his hands against the glass. "Mama, I can't hear the stars." In the control room, alarm screamed. Energy levels spiked across every monitor. Alara hit the comm switch. "Eli, listen to me. Sweetheart, you're okay. Just stay calm." But the silence in his mind only grew louder. He shook his head, frightened. "They're taking the voices away. Everyone's gone." His breathing quickened. Blue light began to pulse from his skin. "Doctor," the technician shouted. "Containment field rising past 80%. He's losing control." Alara slammed her hand on the override panel. "Shut down the barrier. Now!" "It's too late." The lights flickered. Every instrument screamed in warning. Eli's tears began to fall, glowing faintly as they hit the floor. The sound returned, the same low, trembling cry that once wiped out an entire fleet. But this time, it wasn't just sadness. It was fear, and fear spreads. Above Earth, the coalition ships trembled as energy readings spiked off the scale. "Containment field failing," shouted a Crothi officer. "Impossible. Increase output." "It's not the field, sir. It's reality itself." The energy web cracked. Then came the roar. A wave of blue-white light exploded from Earth's atmosphere, sweeping across the fleet. Ships twisted, broke, and vanished into nothing. The sound that followed wasn't mechanical. It wasn't even physical. It was emotion, pure, endless, unstoppable. Every being who heard it felt their worst memory all at once. A mother losing her child. A warrior watching his home burn. A creature alone in the dark, reaching for a hand that never came. In one heartbeat, the galaxy remembered what it had made humanity feel. And in that same heartbeat, it wept. Back in Vault Echo, Alara felt her knees as the building shook. The screens flashed blue, then black. Sparks filled the air. Through the chaos, she could see her son, floating now, surrounded by a halo of light, his eyes pure white. She crawled toward the glass. "Eli, stop. You're hurting yourself." His voice echoed in her mind. "They're scared, Mama. Everyone's scared. I can feel it." Tears streamed down her face. Then show them something else. Show them hope. The glow around him flared brighter, then softened. The roar began to fade. The trembling stopped. Slowly, Eli lowered himself to the floor. Outside, the light in the sky dimmed. The coalition fleet was gone. The stars shone again. Hours later, silence returned. Ilera stood in the ruins of the control room, watching her son sleep in her arms. His breathing was slow, peaceful. The air around them hummed faintly, calm, balanced. A voice crackled through the damaged comms. Dr. Voss, the alien fleets, they're gone. Vanished. She closed her eyes. They wanted silence. Now they have it. Far beyond the stars, across 1,000 worlds, every sentient being woke that night with tears on their face. Not from pain, but from something deeper. They didn't understand why. But somewhere in the quiet corners of their minds, they heard a child's voice whisper, "Don't be afraid anymore." And in the heart of that small blue planet, a mother held her child close and whispered back, "You've done enough, Eli. Rest now." Above them, the universe itself seemed to exhale, and for the first time since war began, the galaxy knew peace. The galaxy healed slowly. Worlds that once trembled under the shadow of conquest began to see sunlight again. In the silence left behind by the predators, stories began to spread, whispered in every corner of the stars. They all spoke of a single day, a single sound, the day a human child cried, and the galaxy changed forever. No one knew his name. No one knew his face. But everyone remembered the echo. They called him the Crying Star. On the far edge of the Orion Arm, a small trading vessel drifted past the shattered remains of a Zarkan battleship. The hull, once black and proud, now floated quietly, overgrown with cosmic dust and crystal light. Inside the ship's log, a final message looped endlessly. "Run, run." The trader shook his head in awe. "Humans did this," he whispered. "One human child." His partner, a Solvan pilot, frowned. "A myth." The trader smiled sadly. Every truth starts as a myth. Far away on Earth, peace had become ordinary again. Cities rebuilt. Gardens grew over battlefields. The stars above were quiet, not in fear, but in respect. In a quiet town near the ocean, Dr. Lara Voss sat on a porch with her son. Eli was older now, maybe 10, his eyes bright and curious. He liked to watch the sea. He said the waves reminded him of the heartbeat of the world. Ilera handed him a cup of hot cocoa. "Still listening to the ocean, huh?" He nodded. "It talks to me sometimes. Not in words, but in feelings." She smiled. "What does it say?" "That it's okay to rest." Ilera looked at him for a long time. Her miracle, her weapon, her child. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to believe that maybe the galaxy had finally learned. In the council chambers above Earth, ambassadors from 100 worlds gathered. For the first time in history, every major species of the galaxy met not for war, but for peace. The human delegate stood before them, calm and resolute. He pressed a button, and a hologram of Earth appeared, surrounded not by weapons, but by light. "We call this the Accord of Echo," he said. "A promise that no emotion, no species, and no child will ever again be used for destruction." From the audience, across the ambassador, one of the survivors of the failed containment fleet, rose to speak. His voice shook. "We once called you monsters, but your child showed us something we forgot." The hall went silent. He placed a clawed hand over his chest. "He showed us fear, but also love. We will not forget." Back in her home, Ilera watched the broadcast play on a small screen. She felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. "Hope! Eli!" she called softly. "Come here, sweetheart." He ran over, curious. "Look," she said, pointing to the image of the Galactic Assembly. "They're talking about you again." He frowned. "I didn't do anything." She smiled gently. "You reminded them what being alive feels like." He tilted his head. "Is that good?" "It's everything," she said. Later that night, as stars shimmered above the ocean, Eli walked barefoot across the sand. The tide whispered softly around his feet. He closed his eyes, and for a moment he felt again the hum, the rhythm, the pulse of countless hearts across the galaxy. They weren't afraid anymore. They were listening. He smiled, whispering to the stars, "You can rest now." And somewhere in the distant dark, faint lights began to flicker, like answers from a void. In the centuries that followed, the crying star became legend. Entire faiths grew around it. Scholars wrote songs, and poets spoke of the human child who spoke through sorrow and saved creation. But among humans, the story stayed simple. Parents told their children, "Once, there was a boy who cried for everyone, and when he did, the universe learned to feel again." 300 years later, a new ship, the Voss Explorer, left orbit around Earth. Its mission, to reach the edge of known space and carry humanity's message to any who still remembered fear. On its hull, etched in shining letters, were the final words ever spoken by Lara Voss before her death. "The universe is not made of stars and stone. It is made of hearts that remember." In the great archives of the Galactic Network, the oldest entry remained untouched, a single sound file. No encryption, no label, no origin, just a recording. It began softly, a faint human cry. Then it grew, not in volume, but in feeling. Sorrow turned to warmth, pain turning to peace. At the end of the file, a small voice whispered, "It's okay to be afraid. That's how we remember to be kind." The file had been played billions of times across the centuries. No one had ever deleted it, because whenever darkness rose again, someone somewhere would play that sound, and the galaxy would remember. On the quiet shores of a world long healed, under the light of 1,000 gentle moons, a child's laughter echoed across the sea. It sounded almost like music, almost like a heartbeat, and the stars, old, wise, and endless, shimmered brighter, as if smiling back. Because once, long ago, when predators ruled the sky, a crying human child taught the universe how to feel.